healthy hydration, what, why, and how we could achieve the healthy hydration. As you know, water as H2O, it is one of the nutrients. And since about 15 years ago, literature, one of the journal showed to us that water is a forgotten nutrient. Seems that we already consumed in the early life than early human being in the world, but actually as a nutrient forgotten to consider water as a nutrient. So the studies and some publication during the last 2 decades and some textbook you can see also appear a special chapter on the water and electrolyte. Previously, there is no textbook mentioned about the water as a nutrient. And our college usually from the physical exercise and people learn deeply on the sport nutritionists usually care about the importance of water for the physical activity, for the sport performance, but they are just usually little care on the importance of the water. Everybody here, it depends on the age of you, about 2/3 of your body weight is water. So mostly the male is higher a little bit slightly than female. So about 2/3 of our body is water. And several organs in our body have or contain water more than the other organ. Like bone is very small water content, but if we discuss about brain, kidney, lung, it is a very important internal organ. Even heart and eyes is contain more water, and the highest one is in the blood and the eyes, and also in our muscle. So without this component, our body organs will not perform optimally. So this one of the publication by Jaquer around 2009. Yeah, it also mentioned that the water is essential nutrient, mean our body cannot produce even through the micronutrient metabolism. We can get water by metabolizing a carbohydrate, protein, and fat, but about 90% of our water requirement should be from outside through drinking and eating. That's why it's called an essential nutrient. And you heard about Mahatma Gandhi. A human can go for more than 3 weeks without food. Mahatma Gandhi always apply in his life about fasting and sometimes also several days, yeah, not consume food. So he still survived without food up till 21 days. But for the water, no one could survive more than 7 days. Yeah. So some studies reviewed by Williams, most people can survive uh, without water no more than 7 days. And some studies also showed that especially for the hunger strike people who protest about the political things in the prison as a prisoner, if the body weight is contain a normal water at the beginning and also some fat storage can be live until 74 days, but is very rare. Mostly about 45 or 65 days without food, but without drink, it can be only live up till 7 days. That implies how important the water for our body. This also several studies mentioned from the early 20 a decade of the 20s, and then to the second decade about the how important is not only water for the normal people but also for the sick people and need to be uh, regulated or need to be controlled the water intake. When I tried last 2 days to search about the word, the keyword hydration in the Google search, it appear about 277 million results. Yeah, is during the last 15 years, so many literature on hydration, and also using the keyword hydrated, also a little bit less, but still about 155 million worth of hydrated. It is getting popular in terms of the studies, in terms of the publication, popular writing article. And when I come up to select the healthy hydration keyword, it is only about half of that. So the keyword healthy hydration is still new among us. And last year, I got opportunity discussion with there are three professor and medical doctor from University of Indonesia Faculty of Medicine, Prof. Perlindungan, and Prof. Budi as a Obgyn, Prof. Palinder as a internist, and also one of my medical colleagues from that university as a pediatrician. We discussed about several months and we come up with one conclusion and also publish one book entitled Healthy Hydration. So from that we try to define what is healthy hydration. So we at a time and come up with the small books. Healthy hydration mean the adequacy of the water intake is not only in terms of the quantity, but also in terms of the quality of the water. And when we define that, we try to define first what is dehydrated and what is hydrated. And the way to avoid from dehydrated, it is the mechanism called hydration. So when we replace the water adequately and safety, then we say that it is healthy hydration. So when we are facing hydrated condition, instead of body not having enough water to function optimally, we will feel thirst, fatigue, dry mouth, and our skin also getting dry. If it is more than 2%, can be starting on headaches, weight loss, and it is more than 3%, it can be dark colored urine, muscle cramp, rapid pulse, and that can be fatal. So the way to avoid dehydrated situation, only two things: please drink a safety and adequate water, or some you can get from eating food, especially vegetable and fruit, or the food or soap that contain also high content of water. And then by healthy hydration, we can have a state of our body called hydrated. Why it is important? I come up to the second question to answer the second question of my title. At least there are 8 reasons why we need a healthy hydration. It's not only for health, yeah, but also for especially women who have a good quality of skin, to be a beauty from the outside, and also to have a better cognitive performance, because 85% of our body water is in our brain, yeah, and also for physical performance. That during several decades ago, by sport nutritionists and physical exercise experts, is really known how important water to improve the physical performance. So I will not discuss this on detail, but you know exactly if you eat food without water and then you will feel problem in your tummy because the digestion is not running well. Yeah, if your digestion does not running well, it's starting will disturb your health. And how important also water in the muscle and all the internal organ. It's related later on to increased risk of metabolic syndrome and other non-communicable disease to be explained later on by the second speaker. So if I try to summarize the importance of the water for our body, so in the top side, the effect of dehydration to performance, it is for the performance, we classify depend on the percentage of water of the body weight. If it is 2%, they impair of only on the thermoregulatory ability. If it is between 2% to 4%, the negative effect will be on the reduced muscular endurance time. This is important for the athlete. It is important for the working people and employees. And also, if it is between 4% to 6%, lack of water in our body, so will be more problem, reduced muscular strength, endurance time, and a cramp. And more than that will be heat stroke, coma, and death. So the percentage of the water loss of the human body will really reflect the physical performance in each of us. It's not only among athletes, but also among everybody, whoever still would like to live properly in the world. Yeah. This is one of the study among the Ironman triathlon. You know, in the Ironman triathlon, usually there are 3 steps they do in the loop 1, loop 2, and loop 3. In the loop 1, usually swimming about 4 kilometers, and the stage 2, riding bicycle, it is about 180 kilometers, and running in the end stage. It can be seen here, yeah, in the black color. It is the dehydrated athlete Ironman triathlon. That the time they need to finish is higher. This means it's not good now. The good one is the hydrated one with the white bar color. Yeah, so it's spend time to achieve the target on the swimming, on the cycling, and also in the running. It reflects a good performance for the healthy hydration Ironman triathlon. This is also so that the amount of the hydration, the water loss, it is in the axis. The higher the water loss, and then will affect on the aerobic exercise index. Yeah, in the left side. Also in the right side is about the performance. Yeah, so the higher the level of hydration, healthy hydration, the intake of the water when someone exercise, the better the performance. It is the summary of this graph. And also about the total body water loss. Yeah, if we lose more total body water, and then the plasma osmolality is getting higher, and will have a problem, will affect the physical performance. Here also comparing unflavored water, flavored water, and also salinated water related to the how much we could bring. So sometimes someone is already boring with the unflavored water, then you can put the flavored water. You can drink a flavored water, can be enriching with the slice of fruit or lemon and other things, and then you will increase your appetite to drink. So it is good for the someone that boring to the unfiltered water. But as long as you can drink unfiltered water is no problem. But the way to increase the appetite, sometimes by using the flavored water, by slicing some fruit, put it into the unfiltered water, it's getting better. And now about the third question of how much and how to know that we are already healthy hydration or suffering from dehydration. So it is a very long study about 4 decades ago about the human body water balance. It is among the male adult. Approximately the requirement of one adult at the normal condition about 2.5 liter or 2,500 milliliter. How they got that water? It can be from metabolism water, because when we eat carbohydrate, protein, and fat, it metabolizes in our body, and the side production of that about 10% is water. And we got also water from food, especially the more fruit and fruit we consume it, the more we got the water from food. But in general, about 2/3 of our daily water intake, it is from beverage, include mostly in Indonesia, based on the study already done, it is plain water. And how the body use that one, and then to make a balance to throw it out from our body. There are several ways to make this balance. First, mostly from the urinated process, about 2/3 is through the urine, about 1.5 liter every day. We have an urine volume, and also sometimes we didn't realize that. That's why we call insensible loss via skin. Every day, depend on the temperature of the room, in the cold temperature or even in the hot temperature, your skin, come up with insensible water loss. It is about 28% to 30%. And the others, if you have exercise or physical activity, you sweat about 8%, and then among through your faces of about 4%. So in our body, the water consists of, there are intracellular.
Excuse me, Prof. 2 minutes more, Prof.
Yeah, there are intercellular, and also there are water in the extracellular. But most of the type of water that we have, it is intracellular in our cell, and the extra cell is about 1/3 of that, so about 20%. And the way to control our body water, it also depends on the electrolytes, especially on the sodium or natrium. This is several conditions. If the lowest the natrium will be hypovolume and will have a negative effect later on. Or if we increase our sodium, will be have also problem on our blood called hypovolume. And there are several conditions. The important thing, we need the normal extra cellular fluid, as I mentioned in the last column in the right side. So the first time WHO published about the water requirement, it is 2003, and then after that, year after that, the Institute of Medicine US published also from the expert review on how much water that we need. And Indonesia is already adopted about 10 years ago. We start Indonesia to develop the how much the water intake by each group. We call that Indonesian recommended dietary allowances, already include water requirement inside. And this is also, it depends on the physical activity level and the temperature of the environment where people work. It can be up to 4.5 liter. And how to know that we are already healthy hydration? There are so many measurements. It depends on the the tools that we have and the accessibility to this tool. First, can be for using the body weight. It is usually for the athlete that before the uh, activity, before sport and after sport, they can measure and correct it with the urine and how many that the water they spend in the activity. That means that milliliter water have to be consumed. It can be also using the tracer technique, yeah, using the deuterium, can be bioelectric incidence. The tool is a little bit expensive, but it will compare from time to time about the composition of the body water. Can be also plasma or serum osmolarity from the blood, can be also from the urine. The most common one, urine osmolarity or urine specific gravity, but the current one is the plasma osmolarity. And also the simple one is urine color that already developed by Prof. Larry Armstrong from US. So using this simple one like this is can easy as long as we have a good uh, electricity lamp to see, cannot in the dark toilet to see whether the color is appropriate, we are hydrated or we are dehydrated. So the darker the color, this means we need to more we need to drink more water. So
Excuse me,
sometimes people
Prof.
ask how much the water we need. This is the last slide for me. That the ancient philosopher Hippocrates uh, said that every single essence is opposed to the nature. So if we drink so much water, for instance, if we drink 5 liters of water only about 5 or 10 minutes, and there will be have a problem. But if we drink slowly, step by step, according to our requirement, this make us a good, healthy hydration. So I come up to the conclusion, Bu Siti, that healthy hydration is to get the right amount and quality of fluid to be healthy and productive. Healthy hydration is important for optimizing cognitive, physical, and physical function for our body. And there are some measures of healthy hydration. The most simple one is urine color and combined with the clinical signs like thirsty, fatigue, headache, and etc. Thank you very much for your attention.
Hi, everyone. My name is Erica Perrier, and I am Head of Health, Hydration, and Nutrition Research at Danone Nutrition Research in Paris, France. And I'm delighted to be here today to tell you all about healthy hydration and non-communicable disease risk, or more simply put, will 2 liters per day keep the doctor away? Now, if there's one thing you get out of this talk, what I'd love for you to take home is that drinking plenty of water and staying well hydrated contribute to long-term health and disease prevention. And here's a little overview of what we'll speak about today. First, I'd like to take you through some signs of underhydration and understand where we find water in the body, the concepts of water balance, and hydration biomarkers. Second, we'll talk about the evidence that we actually have today that healthy hydration is associated with non-communicable disease risk or prevention. Very briefly, we'll speak about kidney health, metabolic health, vascular health, and some other new emerging areas that are quite interesting. And finally, to tie this in with something practical, we'll talk about what it is to be well hydrated and some evidence-based targets for fluid intake and hydration biomarkers that might be relevant for your patients as well as you and your family and friends. So to start off, just a quick reminder that we are made of water. Quite literally, more than half of our body mass is made up of water. And this also applies to our organs. Depending on which organ you're talking about, we have organs that are 3/4 water, such as the brain, even up to above 80% water in organs such as the kidney. So not only is water the main component of our body, but we also consume more water than any other nutrient. Now, these are figures for an average year, where an adult male will consume about 100 kilograms of carbohydrate, far less of protein and fat, and nearly a ton of water. And this makes water not only the most overconsumed, but also the most understudied nutrient that we have. Fortunately, today that's starting to change. And there's one other particularity about water, which is that body water losses must be replaced daily. And this is very different than other nutrients. For instance, we have carbohydrate stores in the body in the form of glycogen. We have other energy stores in the body in the form of fat, but we don't have extra water stores in the body that we can tap into. Now, body water balance is a sum of all of the intakes of fluid that we have. Now, these come mostly from water and other beverages, but also include water from food and a small amount of metabolic water production. And this is balanced against all of the sources of body water loss. Insensible loss, while I'm speaking to you today, for instance, I'm losing water. You're also losing some simply sitting there listening. From sweat, and this could be very, very different as a function of the environment you're in and physical activity. And a major area of water loss is urine. Now, this is going to be quite adaptable, with losses of just as little as 500 mLs per day in someone who drinks very little, or up to 2 liters or 3 liters more in someone who drinks more. Now, this brings me to a really important concept about low drinkers and high drinkers, and you'll see this as the presentation goes on. But very quickly, in situations of high fluid intake, the hormone that regulates body water balance, the antidiuretic hormone, or AVP, is quite low. And as a result, there is a high volume of urine production, and the urine is not very concentrated because there's the same amount of solute but in a larger volume of water. Conversely, in low drinkers or in situations of low fluid intake, here's what will happen. Antidiuretic hormone will increase, and this will increase water reabsorption in the tubules of the kidney and result in a lower urine volume excretion at a higher urine concentration. Body water will probably not change very much because the body is actually quite good at regulating body water. And so you'll also see normal plasma osmolality. You may or may not see increased thirst, and you may also see an increased cortisol production in the situations of low intake. So signs of someone who is a low drinker or chronically underhydrated would be someone who has a low habitual fluid intake, a low thirst signal. These people may not be more thirsty than people who drink more water. Normal plasma osmolality, they're not dehydrated, with higher circulating AVP, possibly higher circulating serum cortisol, and a low urine volume and high urine concentration. So these are the signs to look for. Now that we know what to look for, what evidence do we have that hydration is associated with non-communicable disease risk or prevention? Well, first off, why would hydration impact on non-communicable disease risk? Well, from an indirect perspective, it's very clear that favoring water intake over other beverages contributes to a healthy lifestyle. We know, for instance, that sugar-sweetened beverage consumption is associated with increased metabolic health risk in adults. And we also know that people who increase plain water intake in the place of sugar-sweetened beverages or fruit juices, that might be associated with lower weight gain over time. So drinking water just in general is going to be the healthiest choice. But above and beyond just a substitution role, may water intake and hydration play an independent role in modulating this non-communicable disease risk? Is there something really going on with the water intake itself or with the hydration process itself that may be contributing? Well, it turns out that we have two mechanisms of action that may be at play that could explain some of the associations that we see. The first mechanism of action is simply by drinking water. This will increase urine dilution and urine flow rate. And this may be particularly important for pathologies of the kidneys and urinary tract, and we'll get to that a little bit later. But there's another pathway. As we mentioned before, AVP may be elevated in individuals who have chronic low fluid intake or who are otherwise underhydrated. As we know, AVP acts upon the kidney at its V2 receptors to synthesize aquaporin-2, which will open more channels for water reabsorption and result in a lower volume of highly concentrated urine. But that's not all that AVP does in the body. And in fact, if we look elsewhere in the body, and particularly on some organs that are associated with other disease systems, we see that there are also receptors for AVP. For instance, there are V1 receptors in the liver that may contribute to facilitating glycogenolysis or gluconeogenesis. There are V1b receptors on the pancreas that, as a function of the external environment, may actually facilitate either insulin or glucagon release. There are V1 receptors in the smooth muscle that would regulate vasoconstriction. There are receptors in the brain that may also implicate some social and behavioral aspects, and we have seen some of that in some of the animal models of research. And finally, we know that when AVP is secreted, this also tends to act with CRH to secrete ACTH and then cortisol. So AVP could also be a signal for an upregulation in some of the corticotropic hormones. This, we know, could also be linked to gluconeogenesis, could also inhibit insulin release, and could also work at the level of some of the fat cells. So, we do have some mechanisms here that might suggest quite reasonably that water intake and the processes by which the body regulates hydration could have an impact on health. Another thing to note is that the way that we look for links between water intake, hydration, and disease risk is largely through cohort studies. Now, cohort studies are large groups of individuals, and they are good to establish links or associations between a behavior, such as eating or drinking or smoking or exercise, and a health outcome. It's important to note, though, that cohort studies cannot establish that a specific behavior caused a specific health outcome. So we're largely here talking about association studies with very few exceptions. So here's a little bit of the tour of the body that we're going to take today. We'll talk about kidney health, metabolic health, cardiovascular disease, stroke, and potentially some other non-communicable diseases that may be linked with hydration. To start with kidney health, we do have some evidence that low water intake could be linked to a higher risk for kidney disease. And we also know that increasing water intake is effective in secondary prevention, may even be effective in primary prevention for kidney stones and urinary tract infection. More specifically, we know that in individuals who have low fluid intake or low urine volume, we see higher odds of developing kidney disease over time. And that more specifically, in the NHANES study, we were able to see that low plain water intake was associated with higher odds of prevalent CKD. For kidney stones and urinary tract infection, we actually have randomized controlled trial evidence that show a beneficial effect in the secondary prevention of the disease. What that means is that in people who develop kidney stones or in women who are developers of frequent urinary tract infections, increasing water intake will probably lower the risk of those urinary tract infection recurrences by up to 50%, and likewise for kidney stones. And in fact, both the American and European urological associations do encourage maintaining a fluid intake sufficient to produce at least 2 to 2.5 liters per day of urine. So that's a quick tour of what we know about kidney health. Now I'd like to talk to you a little bit about what we know about metabolic health. So metabolic health would be obesity, metabolic syndrome, type 2 diabetes. Now, there are a number of studies who have looked at the relationship between water intake and markers of metabolic disease, in this case, glycated hemoglobin, which is a measure of glucose in the blood over time. So this study found that for each additional cup of plain water consumed, there was a lower likelihood of having high glycated hemoglobin. But if you look more closely at the details in this study that was published by Harriet Carroll et al., we see that this relationship actually only holds true in men. Now, similarly, if we look at a slightly older French study from Ronan Roussell's group, this group also reported that higher plain water intake was associated with lower odds of developing hyperglycemia or diabetes over a 9-year period. But if you look more closely at the data, again here, this relationship only appears to hold true in men. The relationship was not observed in women. And finally, in a study that was only done in women, this is a large American cohort, where they looked at plain water intake and the development of type 2 diabetes, they found that in women only, there was no relationship between plain water intake and diabetes development. So this also kind of goes along with the 2 previous studies that I've mentioned, suggesting that maybe this is an effect that's much more prevalent or much more important in men. Now, those were studies looking directly at the impact of water intake. If we look at studies that look at AVP, we see a slightly different picture. This is a Swedish cohort that looked at high circulating AVP as measured by its surrogate copeptin. And higher circulating AVP is really interesting because it predicted not only higher fasting blood glucose and a higher fasting insulin, but also predicted the onset of new onset diabetes with an actually very high risk ratio. So what you see here is that in the lowest quartiles of copeptin versus the highest quartiles of copeptin, people with highest levels of circulating copeptin were 3 to 4 times more likely to develop incident diabetes. And this is even true among people who had non-impaired fasting glucose at baseline. So this is pretty remarkable. So far what we know in metabolic health is that plain water intake appears to be linked to diabetes risk, but only in men. And that if we look at AVP, we can see that higher AVP is linked to higher glucose, higher insulin, and diabetes risk in both men and women. Now, what do we know about cardiovascular disease? Here we don't actually know as much, and the evidence is quite mixed. A couple large studies have found no associations between total water intake and the odds of cardiovascular disease. And this comes from both an American study and also a Swedish study who looked at copeptin or vasopressin and also found no relationship between vasopressin and heart disease or cardiovascular health in the general population. But there is one other study I wanted to bring to your attention because I think it's a study that's quite interesting. So this is an American study that was done in a very specific healthy population. So the Adventist Health Study is a study that was done in a group of religious people in the United States who have very specific beliefs that include not smoking, not drinking much alcohol, and eating a largely vegetarian diet. So these were people who were young at baseline, had normal BMIs for the most part, were quite educated. And as I mentioned, low smoking rates, very low alcohol consumption, regular exercise, and a healthy diet. So these are all factors that we would generally associate with being very protective against cardiovascular disease. Now in this study, they asked individuals to report how much plain water intake they drank per day, in glasses per day. And what's fascinating here is that despite all of these other healthy behaviors, across the board, higher plain water intake was associated with a lower risk of fatal coronary heart disease. Now again here, the trends appear to be much stronger in men than in women. And that's interesting because it replicates a little bit of what we saw in the metabolic health studies. So for cardiovascular disease, I would say that the evidence is mixed. There are 2 major cohort studies that have shown no evidence whatsoever for a link, and 1 strong study suggesting that water may be protective. Now let's move up to the brain and talk a little bit about stroke. Now this is not a cohort study. This is an observational study in which stroke patients who were admitted to the hospital were classified as either being well hydrated or as being underhydrated or having poor fluid intake based on their urine osmolality at admission. What the researchers found is that the patients who were classified as underhydrated were more likely to be classified as having a severe stroke at admission. And at discharge from the hospital, they were more likely to have a worse independence score, which means probably needing more help getting over the stroke. Now, this is an observational study. There was no intervention here. So yeah, we can't really draw very strong conclusions. But clearly, this is some very interesting work that will need to be followed up on to see if hydration may be a factor, not only in preventing stroke, but also potentially reducing its severity. So we've taken a tour of kidney health, metabolic health, cardiovascular disease, and stroke. But what about other non-communicable diseases? Now, this is a study that has not yet been replicated, and it's a little bit complex to go through, but I thought it was interesting to take you through this study because this group, headed by Natalia Dmitrieva in the United States, actually did a study that looked at both animals and humans. So the first experiment involved mild, lifelong water restriction in mice. And throughout most of the lifespan of the mice, these mice appeared to be developing very normally. First thing you can see is that their urine osmolality was much higher in the group who was on water restriction. But what's remarkable is that the declines that they noticed appeared to happen a little bit later in life. So both groups of mice developed quite normally up until the end, in which we started to see a dramatic decline in weight in the water-restricted group, which is quite surprising to see in the end of life in only one of these groups. We also saw that the survival rates and the lifespan were dramatically reduced at the end of life in this water-restricted group. So these researchers concluded that potentially there was something going on with the water saving that had to occur all through lifetime that resulted in, dramatic decline, but only seen at the end of the lifespan. So once they had done that, the same research group looked at an American cohort in which there wasn't a measure of water intake, but there was a measure of serum sodium, which they used as an indicator of underhydration. High serum sodium would indicate a high plasma osmolality, which may even be considered dehydration, depending on who you ask. And then they looked at the associations between serum sodium and a whole host of outcomes, including dementia, heart failure, lung disease, kidney disease, cardiovascular disease, but also things like blood pressure, stroke, asthma, diabetes. And what they found is that the individuals that had the highest levels of serum sodium were also at higher risk for the development of many of these diseases. Now, this is a really broad range of diseases, and these results have not been replicated for the most part, but it's certainly a really interesting proof of concept study that potentially the importance of hydration may extend into some areas where we're not quite clear yet as to the mechanisms or exactly how it might work. So now that we've gone through a tour of kidney health, metabolic health, and vascular health, I'd like to bring this a little bit home to something a little more concrete, something you can use with your patients, which is, well, how can I tell if my patients are well hydrated? What are some good guidelines that I can give? So how much water does a person need? Well, certainly enough to replace all water losses and to produce a sufficient quantity of dilute urine. And that means that for most healthy adults, total water intake from foods and fluids should probably approach somewhere around 2.5 liters. It'll depend, obviously, depending on the individual, depending on body size, depending on environment. What should I be drinking? Well, very clearly, water is the healthiest way to hydrate and is the only fluid the body needs. And that it's also clear that replacing sugary beverages by water is a very healthy hydration choice. If you're interested, there is a very practical and evidence-based scoring tool that evaluates healthy beverage choices. And this has been proposed by Kia Duffy, and it's available online. And this guides you through a checklist about what types of drinks may contribute to having a healthier beverage index. And finally, given that water needs vary per individual, how can an individual tell if they're well hydrated, or how can you help tell if your patients are well hydrated? Well, if you have access to a lab, dilute urine represented by a urine osmolality of about less than 500 milliosmoles per kilogram is a good sign. Certainly, there are also targets that are a little bit easier to measure with urine-specific gravity and a urine color of less than 3 on an 8-point scale. But another tip that you can ask your patients to do is to simply count your daily trips to the toilet. In adults, 7 voids in 24 hours is associated with optimal hydration. We have a whole host of other hydration education materials available at the Hydration for Health Initiative website, and I would encourage you all to connect and to join if you're not members. You can also follow us on various instances of social media, including LinkedIn and Twitter. And with that, I'd really like to thank you for your time. Have a great day.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you so much for the committee of the second International Symposium on Food and Nutrition, and particularly to Professor Hardinsah as the President of Federation of Asian Nutrition Societies for having me. It is really an honor to be here with you, definitely. And then I'm going to talk something different. Actually, I really follow the discussion on the previous presentations. And now I would like to give you the different perspective related to, still, of course, definitely we can correlate to the hydrations, of course. But this is coming from the different perspective, because at the end, we believe that healthy hydration comes from the healthy nature. And then before I start telling what kind of business model on circularity that we should drive in the future, I would like to share a little bit a short video just to give you a kind of a context on water and also the issue related to water in one of the watersheds in East Java, so that you understand that basically this is also another challenge that we need to address related to the water. So I will share the video. I hope it will work.
Udah tanam sini aja sih. Sih. Dulu gak seperti ini. Tanaman-tanaman besar-besar sih. Sini sih. Sekarang kok malah gini ya, apa ya? Kalau dulu sungai-sungai ini gak seperti sekarang. Bahkan sawah itu cukup dari aliran sungai. Kalau sekarang sudah mulai kurang.
Nama saya Yasir. Saya pelajar SMA di daerah Grati, Pasuruan.
Ini bambu, biar nanti bambu.
Saya tertarik untuk belajar tentang tanaman dari Pak Mahrus, seorang petani. Saat saya belajar menanam, ada hal yang cukup mengejutkan saya. Saya mendapatkan fakta tentang kondisi daerah Sungai Rejoso yang kini sudah berubah. Saya penasaran, apakah kondisi daerah aliran Sungai Rejoso benar-benar riskan?
Karena kan rencananya ini akan dimanfaatkan oleh banyak orang. Nanti kalau udah dekat, Waalaikumsalam. Oh, aduh. Ya.
Kenyataannya, saat berkenalan dengan Pak Agung,
ya, kebetulan
beliau juga menjelaskan hal yang sama.
Melakukan pengamatan. Nah,
oh iya, Pak Agung adalah dosen dan peneliti lingkungan. 10 tahun terakhir, dia konsentrasi pada daerah Pasuruan.
Masing-masing bisa kita ukur. Das Rejoso itu merupakan sebuah das yang panjang sungainya sekitar 22 km saja. Tahun 90-an itu dari cincin bagian hulu, 70% itu masih hutan, tapi sekarang sudah kira-kira tinggal sekitar di bawah 10%. Di daerah hulu ada banyak penambang galian C yang jumlahnya sekitar 40 lebih penambang, yang mana ini akan melukai lapisan cap rock. Saat ini yang paling menjadi perhatian adalah mata air umbulan. Ya. Kita tahu bahwa mata air umbulan ini merupakan mata air yang sangat jernih, kualitasnya sangat bagus, dengan debit yang sangat besar, pernah mencapai hampir 6.000 liter per detik di tahun 70-80-an. Nah, saat ini debitnya semakin berkurang. Sekitar awal tahun 2016 ini kami melakukan pengukuran, kenyataannya hanya menjadi 3.200 liter per detik rata-ratanya. Ini juga ditambah lagi dengan daerah tengah, daerah lepasan ini, masyarakat juga belum mendapatkan air minum dari pemerintah daerah, sehingga mereka dibebaskan untuk melakukan pengeboran. Nah, ini semua tidak dikendalikan dengan baik, tidak dikelola dengan baik, sehingga air keluar selama 24 jam sehari, ini bertahun-tahun keluar, sehingga akhirnya ini akan mengancam keseimbangan air tanah. Jadi antara air yang masuk ke recharge area dan air yang keluar di discharge area, ini sudah tidak lagi balance.
Di antara semua masalah yang bisa mengganggu kuantitas air, ternyata community drilling menjadi salah satu masalah terbesar.
Dari sumbernya itu, dari sumber langsung ngalir nang iku terus nang omah itu termasuk buahan iku mau sing artine ndak
ada 36 desa yang ada di sekitar umbulan ini, dan mereka melakukannya tanpa mengetahui apa akibatnya.
Ini tidak sayang dah, Pak.
Napa sing eman ndak eman iku lho, apa kate eman wong iki termasuk anugerah isan iku.
Nggih.
Dadi wis anugerah sing.
Dan ternyata pengetahuan masyarakat tentang pengeboran sangat minim.
mereka menganggap bahwa air itu berasal dari yang di atas dan air ini seolah-olah tidak akan pernah habis, ya. Meskipun mereka juga sadar dengan adanya penurunan air di banyak sumur mereka, ini mereka sudah merasakan ada sesuatu, tetapi belum sadar. Nah, ini butuh penyadaran.
Manusia seringkali lupa bahwa kebaikan alam harus dibalas dengan kebaikan.
Di masa depannya pasti akan terjadi kekurangan air. Ini sudah sangat mengkhawatirkan.
Untungnya saat ini ada beberapa pihak yang sudah mulai menyadari permasalahan di daerah aliran Sungai Rejo.
Kita sangat ingin menggandeng semua pihak, baik dari akademisi, kemudian pemerintah daerah, kemudian juga mungkin private sector, komunitas, dan pihak-pihak yang lain yang peduli terhadap pelestarian sumber daya air di Pasuruan ini untuk bahu-membahu mencari solusi bersama.
Manusia ini adalah dipasrahin oleh Tuhan untuk penguasa bumi. Kita ini orang hidup, ayo sama-sama dijaga. Itu air jangan sampai buang-buang.
Alright. So this is just to give you kind of an idea on, another challenge related to water that actually happen surrounding us. Then the thing is that what we can do to, to overcome this kind of challenge, because at the end, we as especially us for Aqua as a business, we believe that the best and purest form of water comes from the balance of the water. Therefore, we need to make sure that we protect the water, and then also we ensure the sustainability of the water, so that water will keep flowing. It's not only for us, for our community. But again, this is actually our aim, but this is actually the reality. What is the reality? This is actually, I took this picture myself. This is actually the area where in the video that you just saw. So this is what is happening, which is the land use change in the area of the recharge area where the water infiltrate to the aquifer. This is the situation. So before it was forest, it's now becoming the agriculture farm like this. And then the use of water, which is, I think we need to really engage with the community to be also understand the challenge, how to use the water responsibly. And of course, this is only one water set, but actually in many other water set, is the challenge is more or less the same, even it's not exactly the same, but the challenge is there. So this is also another example on how actually the water pollution is also happening if we are not really able to manage the water properly. So this is just to give you a perspective that there will be a challenge on water because the population is increasing. The water set, as I mentioned before to you, there was a challenge in terms of the land use, in terms of the excessive water usage. So there will be a potential shortage in 2050 if we do nothing. And then another challenge that we have also, I believe you're also quite exposed to the topic, which is on the plastic waste. Almost every day we read or we expose on the challenge on the plastic waste, which is entering the waterways, at the end goes to the oceans. And then if we do nothing as well, or the business as usual, there will be more plastic than fish in 2050 according to the research. So from what I mentioned before, that actually this is from the research as well, from the World Economic Forum. What will be the global risk in 2020 based on the research in 2020? You see, there is kind of a shifting from many different risks to majority the environmental related risks like the weather, climate, natural disaster, biodiversity, etc. and so forth. And then also, what if we predict in the future, the risk is also majority is related to the environment. despite of some other risks that we have to face. So of course this will, we need to do something actually. Why? Because at the end our future generation is really asking us, from the government, from the industry, from many different stakeholders actually, what we can do so that in the future of our generation will be remain as before actually. And then this kind of movement is not only happening, in outside of Indonesia, but this is also the climate rally. I would say the climate strike is everywhere, including in Indonesia, because actually they ask, as I mentioned to you, the government, industry, and many different stakeholders to really to literally do actions on what we can do. And this is, actually the response of the government. Actually, during the Paris Agreement, the government all over the world agreed to address the climate change, to limit the temperature by 1.5 versus the industrial area as the industrial period. So this is kind of the commitment from the government, and then now. Basically, the consumers or our consumers is also getting more and more aware about this topic. From the research, actually, you will see that, of course, they want to understand about the health impact of the product, and then also the affordability, and so forth. But you see that the planet is also becoming a topic where our consumers want to understand more, because they pay more attention to what is happening to our planet in the futures. And then from the research, actually, you see that actually they also, I would say, prepare to pay more if necessary, if the product is really concerned to protect the planet. And then now I start moving to the industry. Then how industry is respond? What we can do to respond this? I use this CDP as one of the reference, because actually this is kind of a self-declaration from the company on our commitment related to the climate change, to the forest, to the water security. What is actually our ambition? What are we going to do? This is actually, as a company, we declare to the CDP, and it's quite open and transparent. And then we as Danone, actually, we are among very few, which is only, I think, 10 or less than 10, accredited as AAA, which is where we really committed to the climate change, forest, and water security. This is, at the end, it is reflected to the way we do business. How we do business, actually, we start really introducing the circularity business model, scaling up the circularity business model, where actually we try to minimize the use of natural resources, so that we are able to to minimize the extractions, and at the same time also use the waste as a resources. If you see here on the right side, actually our business model is more on circularity through our reusable jugs, and also how we use our waste as resources with recycled product, and also use more renewable energy, and also preserve the water. So I give you an example on actually how or what we do related to water in very fast way on water preservations. So this is to illustrate how we operate. So this is actually our factory, which is we are normally operate in water set like this. This is, we call it the water set, where we also operate and surrounding us actually also the community. And then we have to understand the area where the water infiltrate to the aquifer. So this is the area where we need to protect, because before it was forest and now becoming agroforestry, agro-agriculture activities, and then soon becoming housing. Then what we need to do in this area to make sure that the water still able to infiltrate with the good quality, so that in the future the sustainability of the water for us, for the community, in the downstream is still maintained. This is a picture of initiative that we have. For example, we put a recharge well so that water will infiltrate to the aquifer through the recharge well. And that also related to the climate. This is our commitment, which is we want to be carbon neutral 2050, 100% renewable energy. So challenging, of course, to assess renewable energy in Indonesia, but this is one of our initiative to minimize the use of fossil so that we are able to use the abundant resources of energy, which is sun, which is I would say this is really abundant of energy resource in Indonesia. And then now I go quickly to the packaging because as I mentioned before that the packaging also has an impact if we are not managing properly. And as Aqua, we already started move towards circularity model through our reusable jug since 1983, and then we are also responsible for our bottles, which is in 1993 we start introducing the collection initiative through Aqua Peduli so that we are able to collect our plastic bottle so that we can use it for many different good product. And then this is in the 2010, we started increasing the collection of our PET bottle, which is up to now already reached more than 12,000 tons of plastic bottle, where we really use it for our bottle. So it is actually bottle-to-bottle model, which is up to now, we already use up to 25% of recycled content in all bottles, which is definitely it meets the FDA approval, the halal, the quality, all of the relevant certifications. And then of course, this is not enough. Therefore, in 2018, we really make a kind of a bold commitment through our Bijak Berplastik or Be Plastic Wise to scaling up our commitment to collect more than we produce by 2025, to do the education for consumers, for community on the waste, and also to keep innovate our product. So if you look at how we describe our Bijak Berplastik to address the plastic waste challenge so that we are able to really prevent plastic waste entering to the oceans, I would like to describe like this. First, we need to make sure that our product will be 100% recyclable. Make sure that it can be recycled because many plastic cannot be recycled. And also we introduce RGB or returnable glass bottle, which is now available in Bali. And then we have to educate our consumers systematically through the school, through the curriculum, campaign with our consumers so that the awareness on waste is getting there. And then 80% of plastic entering to the ocean actually coming from the land. So therefore, we need to address collection on the land through many different initiatives like RBU collections, and then also connecting with startup like also with the Grab collection, and also we do the waste management collection at the city level. So this is one of the example in Lamongan, so that we are able to prevent plastic entering to the oceans because Lamongan is near the ocean through the systematic approach. And then also we do the river interceptor. This is in Jakarta, so that we can prevent plastic entering the oceans because we stop with this kind of system, which is now still in operation in Cengkareng Drain. And of course, we need to increase the use of recycling materials through the scaling up the recycling industry, and also try to find a way what we can do to recycle and also to have an open loop solution to convert the plastic waste becoming more valuable product like apparel and also some other type of product. So this is just to have a quickly from the different angle, different perspective, that basically we have to do something also because to preserve our environment, because we believe that healthy hydration comes from the healthy nature. So I would like to take this opportunity also to really have kind of a invitation for you guys. If you want to really working together with us, then I would be happy to get in touch with you to bring more impact for our nature. Okay, so thank you so much.